All right, here we go. We're going live. Oh my gosh, we're live again. I'm recording so much amazing content because I'm going to be going on vacation soon. And I realized that when you release 2 episodes a week, you got to get ahead a little bit. So thank you for tuning in if you're listening in live for a little bit. But don't worry, all these episodes are going to be coming out at a nice pace for you over the next few months. Without any further delay, let me introduce our guests. Why did you write a business book? Because you wanted it to be read, right? Of course, it has to be read by the people who would most benefit from your ideas if you really want to have an impact. And that's why I guide my authors to build launch teams that are filled with their likely prospects and referral partners. Now, as a business owner, these are exactly the kind of people that you want to be reaching out to, especially when you have a new resource to share. This is what builds a pipeline to your offers that come after the book, whether that's speaking, coaching, consulting, or some other service. And conversations with prospects and referral partners could lead to new revenue and media opportunities. And revenue is a success metric that you can take to the bank. If you'd like to schedule a complimentary 30-minute book launch or relaunch brainstorming session, complete the form at robbiesamuels.com/book launch support. Now, in a moment, we'll hear from today's panel about their author journey, lessons learned, and strategies that worked. Learning from one another is one of the things I love most about our author community. But first, here's a quick word from our sponsor. Let's hear from our fantastic panelists about their experience writing, publishing, and marketing their business books. First, we have Bill Soroka, is the author of 6 books. He's been a repeat guest on the show because he has so much knowledge to share when it comes to leveraging a business book into a successful business. His niche audience is notaries, but his advice applies to all small business owners and thought leaders thinking about writing a book. Kristin Oelke wrote Trust, Unlocking B2B Growth in Today's AI World, which explores the critical role of trust in fostering personal and organizational growth, providing actionable insights and strategies for building and maintaining trust in various relationships. And Michele Molitor co-wrote I Am Perfectly Flawsome, How Embracing Imperfection Makes Us Better, which guides readers to celebrate their unique flaws and build self-esteem through self-acceptance. Please join me in welcoming Bill, Kristin, and Michele. Bill, I'm going to kick things off with you. I'd love to know a little more about your audience for your books. Who did you write it for? Who were the ideal readers that you had in mind?
Yeah, thank you, Robbie. Thanks for having me here again. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. My book is specifically written for notary entrepreneurs. So let me say this: 5 of my 6 books are written for notary entrepreneurs. My first, Sign and Thrive, which by most standards is my most successful book yet, gives notary entrepreneurs a 5-step framework to better assist the public and mortgage industry professionals when signing their real estate documents, and then, of course, earning more money doing it.
I love it. Kristin, let me come over to you. Who did you have in mind when you wrote your book?
It is those in the B2B tech sector, either investors or CEOs who are struggling with their growth goals. And it's primarily due to a convergence of several things. So one, that the market itself is very complex, but AI is causing a lack of trust to accelerate, and all the research out there showing that, which is putting a drag on sales pipeline. But how do you do that without having to transform your go-to-market motion? And so the book really talks to what these challenges are, going a little bit deeper into why they are occurring and the psyche of the buyer, and how you can, through advocacy, customer advocacy, build a much stronger public trust profile, which then accelerates pipeline and your ultimate growth of the business.
Thank you. Michele, who do you have in mind when you co-wrote this book?
So when Tom and I set out on this journey of writing I Am Perfectly Flawsome, it's really for adults, professionals who are struggling with perfectionism, and it's getting in the way of their success. It's creating debilitating self-doubt, maybe even imposter syndrome, that's causing them to not flourish in their careers and go after the things that they truly want, because they're caught in procrastination and self-doubt, and it's just holding them back and keeping them with their invisibility cloak on. So those are the folks that are best served by our book.
All right. People often write books because it's the information they need for themselves, Michele. So when you were approaching writing this book, did you have to overcome these same tendencies and just like finally ship it? You know what I mean? Like I know authors who, well, I know writers who are not yet authors because they're still tweaking for months at a time. So was there sort of a point where you just had to be like, okay, this is great. Let's just good enough.
I'm giggling because yes, overcoming perfectionism and imposter syndrome was what brought me to coaching in the first place 23 years ago, right? And so it's been a lot of love and research and time spent and like, why does this affect people and where does this come from and why can't we get rid of it, et cetera, et cetera. And so when we're in the process of writing the book, Yvonne DeVita, who is our developmental editor and happens to be Tom's wife, we'd be like, enough. You have to finish this chapter and move on. We're like, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. But yeah, we would giggle at ourselves a lot because we're like, but no, leave it, walk away. Even just today, actually, we got another review and the Kirkus review. And I was like, well, maybe we should tweak this or that. He's like, no, we're not. It's Flossom, just the way it is. I'm like, you're right. Thank you for the reminder.
You gotta live your walk. That's amazing. I'm
Yes.
curious, Michele, when you first got started with this book, and I know your co-author has written other books, what were the early metrics you were tracking on whether this book was a success? And I know that might have changed since it's come out, but were you looking at sales? Were you looking at reviews? Were you looking at business that was being brought in, signups or email lists? Like kind of what stood out to you early on as like, okay.
Yeah, early on, it was really about how do we gather more reviews, because we know that in the world of Amazon, that's a key component. So I was really on a mission to like get as many reviews. We're up to, I think, 35 or 36 reviews on Amazon and 22 on Goodreads, and allowing the book to speak for itself. We had, I don't know, 25, 30 beta readers, and we got astounding reviews from them as well. So that was the initial set of, oh, wow, we actually wrote a really good book. That's super exciting. And then having that lead to, other business, of course, was the next step. And so because of the book, actually, just this last week, I was the keynote speaker at the UC Berkeley Women's Initiative Leadership Conference, which was just utterly delightful, and my first book signing for Flossom. So it was just pure joy, pure joy.
Do you purposely bring one of those pens that smudges so that you could smudge it after you're signed, just to show them how perfectly? Okay, sorry. Kristin, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to have so much fun with you, Michele. Kristin, when you first got started writing this book, was the goal just getting it published? Were there certain metrics you had in mind? Do you know what I mean? Like, is this your first book?
It is.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I remember this mindset myself. It's like, I'm really getting the ideas out of my head was for a long time the only thing I could think about. What would help you know back then that you had done it? Was it just like seeing it printed? Was it holding it? Was there more to the story?
Well, definitely all of that. I mean, in the family, the friends that were like, "You're doing what?" And then, like, when I actually shared it with them, they're like, "Okay, I get it." Because at the time, I was really starting to ramp this business of working with these B2B tech PE firms and CEOs about, what's really transpiring in the market. And I found myself saying the same things over and over again and trying to explain it. And then they'd ask more questions. And it wasn't that efficient use of my time, right? So if I could capture this in a book and really use it more as like almost a selling enablement type of activity, right? That would be good. But then really what it's turned out to be, the more conversations I'm having, is that it's up-leveling the strategy conversation rather than just enabling the sale. So it's really taking me into new opportunities in a very for which I'm really grateful that we're having much broader, deeper conversations. And I haven't had that speaking engagement like you've had, but I've got one coming up in a couple of weeks. I just got invited to speak at an event in London. I'm based out of DC. And it's really to my target market of these businesses that are struggling with the impact of AI. AI in our industry is fabulous, right? It's providing efficiency and effectiveness, but it's also causing all this distrust. And so for us trying to market in that mix, you've got to have a different approach. And what the book does is it talks about that. And so when I started out in a very different place. And now I'm in a new place, and it'll be exciting to see where this goes after I start publicly speaking, because I think the reaction is where I'm evolving to, like, what is that second book, right?
Yeah. A couple of things that I want to sort of key from what you just said, Kristin. One, it sounds like you're building either a new business or a bigger business because of the book. You're also educating your prospects. So it's not just sales enablement, but it's actually making them more curious about solutions for the problems that they now suddenly realize they have, because they have a different way of articulating the problem, which positions you as an expert, authority, guide, whatever you want to call that, which just makes them want to know more, because they thought of there's the problem they know they have, they're willing to admit, right? There's that. And then there's the problem that they really should be looking at, and they're not seeing it yet. And if you were to come to them with a big solution, they're like, we don't need that, because they don't know. So I love how this is shaping out to introduce you to the sector that needs you. And hopefully you get more speaking opportunities to keep building those neural pathways in their minds so they can start exploring new solutions. Bill, coming to you. Bill, you have a very niche, I refuse to say niche, very niche audience. I finally learned how to say apostille now that you've been on 6 times. So tell us, your journey has changed so much over time. That first book, though, is still the one that seems to have the widest appeal. Like, you had a different, your writing that first book was very different than all the books since. Tell me why you wrote that first book. Like, you were not a person who was writing books. You didn't have the empire, the ecosystem that you have now. Where were you thinking? Like, this is a little bit like Kristin's friends. What are you thinking?
Yeah.
What led you to do this? Did you know other authors? Like, did you have any idea how the book was going to change your life? Like, what was the metric that you were like, yay, this thing happened?
Yeah, great question, because Kristin, if you want to write a book where people question your sanity, write a book about being a notary public and making a 6-figure living doing it. That really sparked, it turned heads, like, oh, who is going to read that book? And I had to overcome that as well. Every day as I was writing it, it's like, I was afraid they were all going to laugh at me, or who's going to read this book? But I knew 2 things had kind of converged at the same time. Is I had this immense fear that I was going to leave this earth with the story still inside me. And I had promised myself that I was going to be an author when I was 6 years old. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a writer. But then you know how life and voices get in your head, how you can't make money as an author, you can't make money as a creative, and all of that. So it kind of got buried there for a while. So it reemerged, and it just happened to reemerge when I had this exciting business that had changed my life forever. Because, I was a highly failed serial entrepreneur. And I finally figured some life out as a mobile notary and loan signing agent. So I started making money. It changed my entire life. It changed my relationship. So I had this urge, I was compelled to share it. So those 2 things came together for me to share a business opportunity that could change somebody's life in service to others. And it helped answer a calling from deep inside me. So I had learned a lesson as part of my business to take advice from those who have the results you want. So I joined a class. I wanted to learn how not only to write a book, but how to publish it successfully, self-publish successfully. So I had some guidance as to what I should be using as metrics, like become a bestseller. And this is the reason why it makes such a difference on Amazon, why it makes such a difference to get up to 100 reviews on Amazon. So I had those types of things. Everybody said you're never going to make money in royalties. So that really wasn't too high of an expectation, but I'm a type 7 on the Enneagram and I see possibilities everywhere. So I was sure I was going to make millions of dollars in royalties too. And it wasn't quite millions, but it has been very significant, life-changing revenue for my business and for my life and my family. So that's where it kind of started. And then of course it evolved from there.
Bill, a lot of people though have a calling to write a book. I mean, Kristin was just talking about similarly, like feeling compelled to share something. That doesn't mean it's going to land. I mean, you even said as you're writing a book, this is your book, Sign and Thrive. And, this is what you were just saying. The subtitle is How to Make Six Figures as a Mobile Notary and Loan Signing Agent. First of all, there's a lot of people in the world who don't know what those last few words mean, other than when they need to buy a house. Then they're suddenly like, oh, I got to go find one of those people. Right. Like, so it's not a widely known. I mean, I don't know that if you said to me, like, who do you know that needs this book? Like, you don't know. But on the other hand, what I love about it, and the thing I think we often overlook, is the people who are doing that work are hanging out together in certain spaces. And you just need to do a little bit to be known in those spaces. And so you weren't trying to shout it from the rooftops. It's the exact opposite of what a lot of people do, which is they write a book that's for everyone, but then it's for no one. So you had a particular focus, and you have since focused even further down, and you've seen tremendous success building out the business over time. I'm going to come back over to Kristin. I'm curious, Kristin, hearing what Bill says, does that spark anything in you about where you're going next to this book? Because you're like at the beginning of a curve. I feel like it's just like finding the right next steps.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Super helpful. I think, yeah, when I went out, I had in my mind, who my client base was. And I think in my mind, I was also kind of conflating my advisory work with my book writing. I can have them complementary, but I think there's also different paths, because I think the authoring part, what I'm finding now more interesting are these potential speaking engagements and people asking me, would I come out and do that? And over the last month, those conversations have increased when I'm not trying to talk about advisory, right? When I initially started with advisory, and that's still the market, B2B tech investors and executives, my knowledge is beneficial to both, but I think it's different paths for the success of the book. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think what's awesome is that if you're able to get spin-off business from the speaking engagements that leads the advisory work, then you'll have a full circle. Then you'll start to have that flywheel. Yeah. And so you get to say yes or no to whatever speaking you decide to do, because you're the business owner. It may not all be paid, because sometimes speak to sell is the model more than paid to speak. So if you're able to get in front of an audience that is the right audience, and you can spin off 3 contracts from that, because the secret about selling books isn't selling them individually. It's actually selling them in bulk, whether as a coaching package or speaking package. Michele, I know you've done this a little bit. So tell me, how do you weave in book sales with speaking and coaching, and like, how does it all fit together? Is it really more about attracting a market, or do you also sell to that group of people? What are you approaching that?
So gosh, a couple different ways. So my book aligns perfectly with the work that I do as a coach and hypnotherapist, right? Helping people relieve their self-doubt, their fears, their anxiety, and how to get into action in the world. So each one of my individual clients gets copies of my book just for being a client, right? for speaking engagements, like this one with UC Berkeley, they bought, cases of books and gave them to all of the audience members. And so it was a bonus, because my colleague Angela Stopper, who's the chief learning officer at UC Berkeley, she was the one and invited me to come speak. She's like, I can't pay you, but I can buy your books. I'm like, great, you can buy a lot of them, which she did, and give them all away to folks. And that is, already opened doors to other speaking opportunities and teaching opportunities, which is really, really exciting for me. But it's also spurring, new master classes and workshops that I can do in the business world. How is perfectionism, impacting your business as a leader, and your team, etc. So, I'm like you, Bill, I'm a possibilitarian. I'm all possibilities all the time kind of gal. And it's like, oh, wait, there's another idea. Let me capture that and do something pretty with it. So it's a matter of putting those new ideas into action and getting them out into the world, so that more books can be sold and more people can be touched.
What's so great about the author journey is that I think new authors think it's about publishing, but as you become more established as an author, with even just one book, you realize that new opportunities keep arising, things that you couldn't have foreseen, like masterminding within these companies or group coaching or some other new talk, or that none of that would have been possible if you hadn't made the effort and actually followed through on the project of having the book written, and written well. I mean, this always starts with quality work for a particular audience. The other thing you said that I wanted to just make sure people understood is there was no money to pay you to speak, but there was a budget to buy books. That happens all the time. And if you're not an author, you might go speak, but you make no money. If you're an author, you can sell them books at your author fee. And I remember my first book, which is the one that was about networking at conferences. So it was pre-pandemic. I was speaking at a lot of events. It was very appropriate. I would give 50 copies. If they paid my top fee, I would give 50 copies as part of the contract. And then I would give them 25% off the retail rate. So the book was $20. So I would sell it for $15, but I bought it for $3.50. So if they gave them 50 books and they bought another 150 books, I made money. So even if there was not as much money, or there was a little bit of money, or there was my full fee, whatever it was, there was stacked on top. And people don't throw easily books away. So the books are going to stay on their desk or in their office or come home with them, right? This is a much more so than all the other things we pay for with our names on it. We all have books we've collected over the years.
And a wise man coached me to create a bookmark to go with my book.
Yes.
With a little QR code on it that
Love
takes
it.
them to the bonus page, but there's a little squeeze page in there. So, we get their little name and email address and all of that. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Bill, let's bring you back in here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was just going to say, I love this strategy, and it can work the opposite way too, right? When you want to sponsor an event, but their sponsor fees are, a certain budget that's outside of yours, sponsoring with your books, you can bring retail value of your books to a sponsorship relationship, and it costs a fraction of what they would normally charge you for sponsorship fees. And I've done that a couple of times too, because me paying for 100 books to deliver to an event is a huge value to them, and they match it to their top sponsorship tier. So I end up getting much more value for my money that way.
Ooh, I hadn't heard
like
this
that
before.
idea.
Take a note.
Ding. Bill for the win.
Always. I warned the two before we went live that Bill's going to say something. Of course, he has to keep saying something new because he's coming back to be a guest in the show. So he's saving a few more kernels. I love it. Let's switch to a topic that I happen to really love, but I know some people cringe a little, which is reviews. And I'm going to come to Michele for this one, because Michele, you and I met right around the time you were getting started on this process. We didn't really work closely together, but you and I, I gave you some ideas. You followed through on a bunch of them really well. You had a plan, and that's the key here. You got to have a plan. Was it as hard as I told you it was to get reviews?
It No is the short answer, and it takes consistency. Like as I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh right, I need to reach back out to those people to get them to write those reviews. Right? I'm like, I feel like I kind of hit a ceiling, and it's time to do more outreach. But yes, having a plan, and Robbie, you're brilliant at helping people put those steps into place. I mean, just the masterclass of yours that I watched, and I have all the notes, and I went through multiple times, like, okay, check, 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 check. And that made a huge difference in getting all of the wonderful reviews that we've already gotten. And there's more to get, right? You know, I'm still on a mission to get to at least 50. I guess technically we already have gotten to 50 if you count Goodreads, but not
You want to
50
get them
on
on
Amazon.
Amazon. Yeah. In fact,
Right.
you might have some on Goodreads you now want to get on Amazon. Who knows? Well, you've got 35 ratings and 34 reviews with a 4.9 out of 5 rating, which is really great. The couple of things to mention about this. One is the ratio between ratings and reviews is nearly 100%. That's important to me because it tells me that you ran a campaign to get reviews, not a campaign to get stars. It's a lot easier to get people to hit the stars because they don't got to do nothing. They don't have to buy the book. They just 5 stars. And then it's like, okay, because I know I've come across books with like 123 5-star ratings and less than 10 written reviews. And you're like, what? Like, what was the plan here? But they are being perceived at a glance at first as being someone who has a lot of reviews, but it's very easy. It's like a house of cards. It tumbles apart. So I love that. I also think anytime you have over 20 reviews, it means you had a plan, and over 35 is hard. Getting 50, it's a persistence. Unfortunately, you need like 3 times as many people on a launch team as the number of reviews you want, and you have to follow up with them, and there's a lot of science. So as you mentioned, I used to have a master class. Now I have a whole online program and some coaching that goes with that. Kristin, you seem to be just still getting started figuring out the launch piece of this. You came out of the gate. You got 4 reviews and 5 ratings. Reviews weren't necessarily a part of the plan. Now you've been hearing about this. What are you thinking about it now? Because you have people who like the book, who are using the book. You're getting clients through the book, but it's a question of getting that social proof on the book sales page on Amazon. What might you change about your approach? What are you thinking about this?
I probably need to get personally more comfortable with asking the reviews. I think that that's where it's at. You know, I've heard, feedback when I'm talking with a client or a prospect. Oh yeah, I read part of your book last night as much as I could before I knew we were going to have this call. And I should just be like, I'd love to have you write a review. You know, if they give me good feedback, I'm probably not as comfortable as I need to be on that front, and just be more proactive.
I have had authors on here who had some reviews, not many, out of the gate, but they made a practice of doing what you just described. Someone would either verbally say something or write them a note, like in an email or a social post or something, and they would capture it. Now, by the way, you might make their life easier if they verbally told you something. Just capture it as best you can and just send them the request. And then literally copy, click the link, paste it in. Ease is what it's at, like making it easy for them. Some of the other things I've done is to share with people prompts that they can use to write a really quality review. It's not about the 5 stars so much. It is a review that helps people know this is valuable. Here's who should read it. And here's maybe a quote or a line that really stood out to me. Bill, your first book has over 1,200 ratings, if I remember. Yeah, you have this huge following. 1,477. I was wrong by a couple of hundred there. 1,477 ratings, 280 written reviews, which is nothing to sneeze at. The number of written reviews is incredible. And that's a book that's been out a while, but if I go and look at recent reviews, you have them as late as August of the year. So that's the thing. The longevity of a book is so key. As you've finessed your launch process for each book, did you approach this most recent book any differently, like lessons learned from the review process?
Yeah, I would say so. First, I've learned a lot of just creating quality content that will last, right? The perennial seller concept from like Ryan Holiday, right? But also kind of speaking to what Kristin alluded to, and even Michele and so many other authors, is this discomfort in asking people for these reviews. But since Sign and Thrive has launched, and everything that I've become since then and what I've learned and now what I teach, especially when it comes to reviews, is that people want to give reviews. And it's important because I've heard statistics that say that 91% of consumers make their buying decisions based on reviews, but on Amazon, especially with books, it's closer to 99%. So these types of reviews are extremely critical. And then I see other statistics that say that 70% of consumers say yes, or they're willing to give reviews. They're willing to do it. But life gets in the way. They forget to do it. They think it's going to be harder. So if you can help them overcome those internal obstacles that they put up for themselves by sending them the exact links, by sending them a reminder, gentle reminders that aren't salesy and aggressive, but just like, hey, still ready for you whenever you are, here, click this link and you can give me a review right here, whatever it might be. But also this kind of blew my mind. You got all 70% or more, they're saying yes, they're willing to, but only like 25 to 30% actually do it. So part of this is the author learning not to take it personal when people don't do it. It's just human nature. 30% of the consuming public has that much influence over everybody else's buying decision because they actually follow through and do it.
I have to jump in here, Bill. I love that you brought some stats in here. I got to do some more research because I've been using the 80-20 rule, but I've been saying it's at least 80. It's probably over 90% of people look at reviews before buying something. Who here hasn't, right? Everyone's like, I use reviews. And then I'm like, who regularly writes reviews? And there's very few hands that go up, like less than 20%, not even. But with support, with the structure, with the polite, persistent reminders, with picking the right people to start with, who really are interested in the book, then I have found at least 30% will follow through and get a review on Amazon within the tight time frame that we're giving them. More will trickle in. But I'm working with an author right now, Lois Kramer. She has a second edition of her book that just came out. It's in the soft launch period as we're recording this. She had over 700 people on her invite list to join the launch team. 280 said yes. 140 wrote a review. 100 reviews are already on Amazon. And we are 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today is when her launch day is. So she still has more time to convert some of the people who haven't signed up yet, who were on the original invite list, and get the other people to submit their reviews and get that all in. And she's working with me and my team, and she's following the system. But it all started with her building the initial list of people who were actual prospects and referral partners. So every conversation she has and every reply that comes in is relevant to what she's trying to do long term. But I'm not surprised by her results at all. But I also know that people are like, that's not even possible. It's like, yeah, you don't have to have 1 million people on your email list because you're looking at your network, which is always bigger than your email list. You're not limited to who's on your email list to ask for these reviews. Like, who would most be impacted? Bill, let me come back to you.
Yeah, thank you. I love hearing that. That just blows my mind, and it gives me even so much hope, because there are times when I get a little disappointed. I have a huge email list, and sometimes you start with 30 reviews. But here's what I'd also offer to an author who's feels blocked about this. If you're feeling blocked about even asking for reviews, or you're disappointed that people haven't followed through, ask yourself this: when was the last time I gave a 5-star review to a service, a company, a restaurant, a product that I really enjoyed using? I think sometimes, and I'm not a energy scientist by any means, but I think sometimes we get in our own way and we block that win-win cycle of energy. So if you're not getting the results you want, then start giving them to somebody else, because those reviews make a huge difference. Where you get your pedicures, your manicures, where you take your anniversary dinners, whatever that is, go there, give them a review. that's a positive review that's reflective of your experience, and watch things open up for you.
That's amazing. I remember Yelp has the Yelp Elite, I think they call them.
Mhm.
It's such a small percentage of the overall system, but like you said, they disproportionately impact what we think of all these places that we go. If you've ever checked a Yelp review, the chances are that you're reading a Yelp Elite review, because that's the majority of the reviews that consistently come in. So we could be putting energetically that feeling back out into the world, and we'll probably feel better asking, knowing that we're doing that. So we'll get out of our own way. I love this, Bill. So I want to come back to Michele and ask, other than reviews, what was difficult about this? You had co-authoring is in itself, I don't even know how to describe that. Like, it sounds like you had a good time doing it and you had a great team behind you, but was that challenging? Was getting the ideas out challenging? Was hitting go challenging? Like, what of the whole author journey felt like something that you wanted to pull in more resources to get through?
Well, the whole journey was actually quite dreamy. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better colleague to co-author with. Tom Collins, he and his wife Yvonne DeVita, their business is called Master Book Builders. So they actually help people write and edit and publish their books. So I got the best of all worlds kind of automatically built in to the process. So I had the hand holding and I had the nudging and the let's get it done cheerleading going on. And then Tom did all of the publishing aspects, right? So that made it super, super easy for me. I got to do, the fun part was just like, let's show up and write and do some stuff and then banter back and forth with Tom about yes to this or no to that, or, how we were going to do that. I mean, you'll get a kick out of this. In the chapter on women, we have the monologue from the Barbie movie from Gloria Fiera. And Tom was like, well, we could just have this. I'm like, no, we either have the whole thing or we don't. And Yvonne would come in and she would pick sides, right? So we would wrestle back and forth about which pieces and parts would be in the book or not. But, once we finally got it all completed and we were ready to start, the publication process, the whole marketing is, writing the book. Yay. Oh, wait, now we have to publish it. Yay. Oh, now we have to market it. Oh, okay. That's a whole nother set of skills and different things going on there. And so having, a virtual assistant to help me with some of those pieces, to just getting the social feeds out on a regular and consistent basis. That's something that every author needs to think about. How are they going to do that? What's it going to look like? What's the timing of it going to be? And who's going to help them? Because I can wear a lot of hats, I'll admit it, but it's not always the best use of me or of any of us, right? So finding those support team members is critical. And I know, Robbie, your team is amazing and the stuff that you put out. So you're very lucky.
For me, what I'm hearing as you say this is, if you're going to have a co-author, make sure they know everything about the book publishing process so you have less to worry about. So if that helps anyone who's listening, go for it.
And if you need a recommendation, I have a great one for you.
But truly, it is about having the right team around you. And I don't know that newer authors even know what that team should include or what the skills are that they might need or what challenges might be in front of them. So working with people who are experienced, who can point out the potholes so you don't have to go through them. And BizBook Publishing Hub podcast was inspired from the BizBook Publishing Hub, which has more than 50 experts who guide entrepreneurs through the process of becoming successful authors. So wherever you are in the journey, writing, editing, publishing, or marketing, I'd be happy to chat with you and help you identify the right people to work with. Or you can just go to bizbookpublishinghub.com and poke around and find a lot of amazing people. Kristin, I'm going to change it.
And let me just add to that really quick, Robbie, because I think it's really important for authors to realize you don't know what you don't know about the process, right? And so what I love about the BizBook Publishing Hub is that there are so many resources and you can just go through the list and go, oh, I didn't know I needed one of those.
Exactly.
Oh, I didn't know I needed one of those and one of those and one of those and one of those.
It's
And so not to,
organized in the order of the author journey from writing all the way down to marketing and coaching. So yeah, it does give you, like you said, a little insight, like expanded ebook distribution. Do I have to think about that? Like a book
Right.
trailer. Do I need a book trailer? The answer is probably no, but it's nice to know if you want one, it's there.
Actually, it just occurred to me, Robbie, maybe I should make a hypno recording for people who come to visit so they don't get into overwhelm looking just at the list of everything that they have to do to write their book, and then they freeze like,
I have
I don't
found the
know.
best way to use the hub is actually our hub partners getting it on the screen and kind of walking people through it so they can point people to specific profiles and then give them a little tour. I think anytime you give people this much information, it's a little overwhelming. Kristin, I'm going to switch topics a little bit on you because writing a book and growing a business, clearly you're matching these things together. I'm curious how you approached the reader being really excited and then wanting to work with you. Have you dropped breadcrumbs about the ways you do work in the world? Do you have your email or an offer like a lead magnet, opt-in page, bonus content links or QR codes in the book? If you gave me a copy of the book and I handed it off to someone and now they want to go and find you, like was that all thought through and built in? How you were approaching that?
Some of it, but I've definitely learned a lot. I think it probably goes to I needed to be more overt and connecting it back to me or pulling people back to me. Within the book itself, I connect to a lot of research that builds my credibility rather than is an engagement point to ask me to work for them. What I find that it does, though, is that the people I'm working with don't want to be sold to. They want to have a conversation and they want to then say, can you tell me a little bit more about that? And so it is working for me to use it as a follow-on rather than it's a push after an initial engagement some other way, some other referral. When you're talking about the flywheel, right? That I don't lead with the book, I follow with the book. I'm open to all kinds of ideas, but that's not how it's been working in the past and how I'm getting the clients now.
I like that differentiation because you wrote a book that was for a very specific type of person. You get an introduction to that person. You leave them with a book as soon as you say I have a book and you offer to them, like it positions you a certain way. You're making a gift. They may open it. They may learn a little something. They may get so swept up and want to finish it. They're going to make you want to talk to you more. So I think that's helpful for people to realize you have to change a little bit tactic wise with your audiences.
Yeah,
right.
I would say, I'm sorry. I would say that, like I'm going to be speaking, as I mentioned before, I'll be curious to know, does that flip a bit, right? After they see me talk about what I'm very passionate about and what I have a lot of experience in, right? Will that then lead them to the book to then, because it's a bigger audience. I won't have one-on-one engagements with everyone. Mm-hmm. Will that then be the draw to one-on-one want to engage with me? Mm-hmm. I'm hopeful, of course, but I don't know yet. But that has not been the strategy so far.
I have a suggestion for something you can look into as a speaker. It's called talka.com. talkadot.com. Talka.com. It's a great resource designed by a speaker for speakers. It's a feedback form with a QR code and a link at the very end. You can deliver a freebie piece of content, but people answer a couple of quick questions about your performance, and there's some open-ended fields. And if they have referrals or they hire, they can tell you that they do, and they have a hot or cool lead for you. They can opt in to your email list or not. It captures some nice quotes. It looks very professional, and it's free if you only have 3 codes. So it's like totally awesome for helping identify who in the room would maybe want to raise their hand a little bit.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Bill, I'm such an admirer of what you've done. It's rare that I'm talking to someone, I'm like, how'd you do that? Because I get this question like, do you sleep? But I know you sleep, and I know you've got a full life. I would love to hear what was the biggest success that happened because you became an author? What opportunity were you presented with because you built this community around it? Like, yeah, like if we were gonna like give people a vision of what's possible, I'm kind of curious because there's so many things. You've built all kinds of communities. You got a podcast. You're really doing a lot of different things. Is there one story that kind of sticks out for you?
Oh gosh, I don't know that there is, except I just didn't expect all the doors to open that opened. I didn't even know there were doors there. And I think this is probably the biggest lesson and the biggest takeaway. And you kind of alluded to this earlier, Robbie, is that just getting into the arena, in this instance, it happens to be writing and actually publishing your book, because there are so many people who have the dream of writing and publishing a book, but so few that actually do it. So when you actually follow through, that 1%, I've heard it's, I don't know why I'm statting out today, but it's like 1% actually follow through with their dreams, right? And actually publish these books, things start to happen. And there's a concept called, and I think the guy's name is Steve Johnson. I'm reading his book, Where Big Ideas Come From. And he talks about the adjacent possible. And it's just about how when you get out and you make one thing happen, it creates another room with doors all around it that make other things possible. So you're following the doors. So when I published my book, it made all the normal things happen, right? Like we're talking about speaking gigs, course revenue went through the roof. So, I got 6-figure book royalty revenue coming in, but the real money is in the back end. When you treat your books like a lead magnet and you prepare and you strategize that leads to 7-figure revenue on the back end. And that makes all other things possible, right? It brings in collaborations, partnerships, investment opportunities, all these different things that, frankly, when I came into this business, rather hopeless, has completely changed my life. I've failed time and time and time and time again, 26 times, taken a beating, and finally found something that worked. And when it started to work, you start to realize how generous people are with their ideas and their recommendations, referrals, invitations. When you prove that you're just a person of action, a person of purpose out there. So all of that book really just changed everything within me, first of all, because there's that level of confidence. There's something else that happens when you keep a promise to yourself. And that was a big promise, right? It's not like make your bed in the morning, put your shoes away, which I had to start with. And then 4 years later, I got to publish a book. And when you keep that promise to yourself, things really start to change.
I feel like your subtitle should be Serial Entrepreneur Not by Choice. Because I know a little of your backstory.
Right.
Here, I love what you just said, and we're going to use that as your answer to the what should your newer writers think about when they're approaching their books. And my wife was listening to the audiobook version of that book you just mentioned without earbuds many years ago, and I was in the room, and that adjacent possible idea stuck with me. I never even read the whole book, but that whole idea that you open a door and then suddenly you realize there are 3 more doors in front of you in that room that you would not have even known to look for because they were hidden. I feel like my whole life is about looking for the adjacent possible. When people are like, well, how did you think to do that in your business? Like, it's the adjacent, like it's a multi-potentialite, whatever you want to call it. So in a moment, we're going to get to Kristin and then Michele for their best advice to give someone who's writing a book to help them grow their business. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. All right, Kristin, what would you say to someone who is getting ready or is in the process of writing a book to help them grow their business?
Be purposeful about the joy that it'll bring, because I too struggled with the time commitment. But what I also realized, once I would commit myself to the research time and the writing time and the review time, right? I loved that. I loved that time. And when I thought at the end of the day about that, what, my internal feelings during those hours I was doing that, it felt great. And I'm grateful that the profession I chose, I still love today, a couple decades later, the research, how it's evolving. And so after I stopped struggling with, it was taking me away from other things that I would have deemed high priority, and said, this is priority, and how I feel about this is priority, regardless of anybody ever buys it. And I looked at it that way. That's when the book really started coming together.
I love that mindset shift.
what
That's
I would-
beautiful.
That's what I would recommend.
Michele, what about you? What advice would you offer?
Don't be afraid to ask for help. You don't know what you don't know. There's this little teeny tiny sliver of what you know. And then there's a bigger sliver of, well, I know that I don't know that. And then there's the whole rest of the pie, AKA the universe, that you don't know what you don't even know about it, right? I know about physics, but I don't know much about beyond that. Like there's a whole lot of stuff out there, right? So asking for help, getting curious, leaning into, resources like what you offer, Robbie, in the book, Biz Book Publishing Hub, to really help you create your plan so that you can come at it systematically and not get overwhelmed. And when you do get overwhelmed, reach out for support from your favorite coach or hypnotherapist who can help you rewire your mindset and get out of your own way so that you can fulfill on that dream of what you do want to do and the purpose that you're here to do in the world. So, allowing yourself to have the joy of completing it and getting it out and sharing it with the world is really important.
Beautifully said. Michele, how can people find you and follow your work?
You can always go to michelemolitor.com. Reach out to me there. I'm always happy to have a complimentary and confidential clarity call with folks who are curious.
Fantastic. Kristin, what about you? How can people find you and follow your work?
You can follow me obviously on LinkedIn, but also Bright Rose Ventures, where we talk a lot about the work that we do.
Fantastic. By the way, all these links are going to be in the show notes at bizbookpublishinghub.com. Bill, how can people find you and follow your work?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Real quick, before I go, I'm going to throw one more thing out at you. One of the greatest joys that I get to do is anytime I stay at an Airbnb or even at a hotel, part of my gratuity for hotel housekeeping is a copy of one of my books, and I write a personalized message in it. Also in Airbnb, I leave a book behind that just says, I hope this book finds you at the exact right time, and I sign it. And it's come back to me a couple of times. People are like, I was looking for something and I found this book. Thank you for that. So just wanted to throw that out there. You can find me at billsoroka.com or of course at notarycoach.com.
Oh my gosh, Bill, always dropping more value. We're going to have all the links at bizbookpublishinghub.com, which is also where you'll find more than 50 experts ready to help entrepreneurs become successful authors, and an invitation to join us at a free virtual networking event for writers and authors. I would love you to check that out and go listen to all the old episodes of this podcast. They've been amazing. Panelists, thank you so much for your time today. This has been wonderful.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thank you, Robbie.
Thank you.